Why hello there, how are you today? Awesome Soul here, and they have finally arrived. And that would be, obviously, the Sprinter Leg. So, I am here to give you the lowdown of what they are all about, really. After testing them throughout the day, I have to say, on paper, I know a lot of people were saying, oh my god, they're just fast mech legs, but the playstyle of these things is fairly different than the actual mech legs in a lot of regards, and a few of the other sort of hidden quirks are different than mech legs. Now, the first of which is something I noticed immediately, because yesterday I was actually building the chassis for the bot that you see before you. This is the Daybreaker, my stealth fighter-inspired mech, kind of. And, well, I'll get into that in a second. But what I do need to bring up first is I packed this thing full of hovers. I actually had 3 inside, which I usually only go for 1 in most of my mechs. If you don't know, I've actually done a video on the subject of sort of hovers in mechs. Basically, it increases your movement speed and lets you jump a little further, but not quite higher. But that only works for the old mech legs. What happens with these, however, is it puts you at overclock 1. It basically caps your speed at 134, I think it was, 134 or 138, something like that. Now, if you are not aware, the actual speed that the mech legs should be going, or the sprinter legs should be going rather, is 174 miles per hour. So what's basically happening is the sprinter legs have a flat speed at all overclocks, whereas the hovers get faster as you overclock more. So it's the hovers that are sort of holding you back, and you won't actually be able to meet your full sprinter leg speed until you're around overclock 14 to 15. See, the thing is with the actual mech legs, because their speed is actually 103, I believe it is, something like that, it's obviously under that 134 threshold, so therefore the hovers can't actually hold the speed back. So if you actually do have hovers inside your mech, or your sprinter, I'm still not used to calling it that, if you have hovers inside your sprinter, I would definitely recommend removing them as soon as possible. And if you don't believe me, slap on a speedometer. It's only like 20,000 robits, and it's very useful for testing. I would definitely recommend getting one. Yeah, slap that on, and you will see just how slow you are going. Now, to the other point I was actually going to bring up before I cut myself off, was the fact that you can actually build mechs that are quite narrow with the sprinter legs. So what I've done is go for a very narrow, sleek design, whereas some of my other ones are basically forced to be very wide and bulky with the old mech legs, but the sprinters, because you can actually get them to where there's a 3-block gap instead of a 5-block gap of the mech legs. You can actually get them fairly narrow, and like 2 blocks might not seem like much, but everything helps. And also, what's important there is the fact that you can get the legs so narrow, you can also get the upper torso more narrow as well, because you will have more gun clearance space, which I don't know if you've noticed, but I like to put large guns on the very sides of my mechs, so that is very helpful. Now, obviously, the other difference is the speed. It's about 70 miles per hour faster than the original mech legs. So what does this mean for playstyle? Well, also because they are actually weaker, although they are kind of stronger in a way, but I'll get to that in a second. They have less health overall than the mech legs. So with the sprinter legs, as usual, all legs are very susceptible to plasma. So what you can do here is basically never stop moving. When I was playing the sprinters, I would pretty much never stop moving unless I was crippled or had to stop for some very, very important reason. But I'm sure you're watching in the gameplay, I will be moving around a lot. And that's obviously to protect the legs from being shot or bombed from above, because they're not as wide a target, but they are actually taller. So that's something to take into consideration. And then, of course, we come to the jumping feature of the sprinter legs. Now, I'm sure you've noticed that the jumping feature is actually fairly different, although it might look kind of similar, but actually playing it plays a lot differently. Now, there is a difference in jumping, basically depending on how fast you're moving. So if you're standing still or moving slowly, you will do the old jump, basically the one that the mech does, or the mech legs do. And the sprinter legs moving quickly enough, or at max speed, or they say there's a threshold that you need to be above, but I haven't actually found it yet. If you guys know exactly what speed you need to be above, let me know. I'm sure everyone would like to know that. But once you are fast enough, you will instead do a long jump instead of a high jump. Now, some interesting points here. I've noticed that if you are going uphill, even at a very slight angle uphill, it's in your best interest not to jump. It will be a lot quicker just to simply run up. And in general, I've found that the jumping capability is only really useful for getting across gaps, and also when you're going downhill. It seems like it would be a lot faster to jump downhill rather than to just run downhill. Of course, don't ever jump uphill. Trust me on that one. Now, this actually seems like a small change, but this is one of the things that actually changes the playstyle, at least I think, of the sprinter legs over the mech legs. And the way I would play the mechs would be just jump to avoid plasma barrages, but you can't really do this one because obviously, like I said earlier, you need to keep moving. So instead of jumping to dodge things, your best bet is just to sort of strafe around to dodge things, just because when you jump, you have to actually make an investment in that jump. I mean, you kind of do as a mech as well, but as a sprinter, you're going in one direction because obviously you can't put hovers in there, so it's a lot harder to change your direction mid-air. And that's the other thing too. They might have lots of armor and, no electroplating. Because basically the problem with electroplating on the mech legs is they have a relatively small pool of health, but a big pool of shield. The only thing is, shield can't be healed by nanos. So when it comes to sort of dogfights, if you have a medic, the actual sprinters would probably outperform a mech and a sprinter, or a mech and a healer rather, versus a sprinter and a healer. The only thing though is the sprinters have no real redundancy options, or at least none that are as easy to utilize. I've seen some people use helicopter blades, but they could be a little unwieldy at times. So when it comes to sort of backup movement when you've lost your legs, with the mechs, you've got hovers. But with sprinters, you can't really do that much. So when it comes to sort of, I guess, the tankiness of them, or in this case, redundant tankiness, whatever you want to call it, the mechs definitely have an advantage there. So I'd like to know, down below, what do you guys think of these sprinter legs? Are they overpowered, or is everyone just sort of getting used to them? Because with every update and every new part, it's always been just a flood of people using this one new part. And then it would just go back to, the usual in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. But I don't know. I think sprinters are definitely going to be very popular. I'm not sure they're overpowered. I think they're good and they're definitely fun to use. And that's the thing. Every movement part should be this fun to use. So instead of nerfing the sprinter legs, bring things up. And I've actually possibly been tossing around the idea of a reworked insect leg concept video, but I may or may not get around to doing that if I can come up with enough neat things. But anyways, I'm getting sidetracked here. So yeah, down below, feedback, let me know what you think of these sprinter legs, and I guess, any other thing you have on your mind. I, of course, have been the Awesome Soul. I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.